so important. It is that decision that you're going to take to jump into these locations or not. So the dark zone conceptually is a place, a forbidden place. It's pushing open those gates and going into this location that is unknown, that feels dangerous, that feels like you're stepping into a forbidden zone. And we wanted to keep that. But we also wanted to lean into what Matthias was saying, which was these unique architectural and city-wise structural differences that we have within this one-to-one recreation of Washington, D.C. So, once we had the locations, once we decided, okay, for these reasons, we're going to create 3 different dark zones, then you can look at, okay, but what sort of stories can we construct around this landmark? The landmark being Union Station in Dark Zone East, for example. What could happen there? What could happen in this area in Dark Zone South, next to the wharf, the coastline of the river? What sort of stories could we tell that match the architecture that we're featuring? Lots of interiors, these big government buildings. If you've ever walked around DC, this is a city that is built to exude the power of government, to tell you, okay, this is a place of power. And there's nowhere that states that clearer than Dark Zone South.
Right.
And then in the West, this is Georgetown. Georgetown, if you've ever seen pictures, is possibly, apart from the nature biomes that we have, the nature environments that we have, it's possibly the most different location in any Division game. Go ahead, please. Cut me off. Do you know who I am? Jeez.
Oh, I'm not supposed to bump the table.
No, but
typical.
You're crossing all the lines, man.
Community.
So
people.
As I was saying, it's if I'm talking to, but Georgetown, much lower buildings. It's almost European feel. Very different buildings. So every building feels very different. Tight corners, canals. It has a very European feel to it. So imagine a dark zone covered in this mysterious yellow powder, DC-62, and exploring that. And narrative is super important. And we know that we have a type of player, like me, who is a little bit intimidated by the dark zone.
I'm just a tiny bit intimidated by that.
Tiny bit intimidated. But there are stories, there's gameplay, there's landmarks, there's things to discover lore-wise, collectible-wise, and we have introduction missions where we're going to send you into each of the dark zones sequentially. You hit a level cap, you get an introduction mission. They're not mandatory. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do it. It's an activity that's always going to be there for you, though.
Yeah.
And those introduction missions introduce you to what created those dark zones, what makes them unique, what makes them stand out. I could tell you the stories, but I want to keep that for players to discover as well.
Yeah, but and they're also a great introduction to kind of the key ingredients: extraction, acquiring gear that you need to get out of the dark zone through extraction. So it's a nice soft ramp up to going in to a dark zone that is then populated by other players. I'm trying to say.
Yeah. That's the thing. Sorry.
No.
Please.
Julian, after
please.
you. After you.
No, please.
After you. I was just going to say, we from the gameplay that we're showing right now, we're not doing the introductory missions. We just jumped straight into Dark Zone South.
Okay.
And now, Julian, go on.
No, I was going to say, I got so carried away because really what I love, I don't particularly love being on camera and doing streams and stuff like that, but what I do love...
You make it look so good.
Thank you. Note that down for his performance review. No, but what I do love is talking passionately about the game. And here, I forgot completely to say that it was an atypical PvP, PvP space, which, we're assuming people know, but not everybody knows that. So that's where the intimidation comes too. It's not only that there are enemies that are super tough in the dark zone, it's also other players. And for me, the most intimidating part has always been other players. Mm-hmm. And one of our focuses on this game, Division 2, has been how can we make the dark zone into a fairer place, a fairer playing field, a deeper playing field as well. And we've got a lot of design elements and and rules and loops there that really are conducive to guiding players who are maybe a little bit intimidated, but want that risk-reward challenge, want that intensity into the Dark Zone, which is, you know, a fair space of the map when you think about it. So dedicating all of that space only to, you know, the most hardcore of the hardcore wasn't exactly what we wanted to do. But we have something for them too.
We have something for them as well. Let's take a look at the gameplay here, because for the loop that you were talking about, so there's been changes made to the rogue mechanics. We just maybe say that the rogue kind of concept has expanded a little bit in the Division 2. So tell us a little about the new rogue. What are they actually doing?
Well, right here, what you saw there, that they were interacting with a shade terminal in the Dark Zone, but it needs a little bit of setup. So first of all, for people who don't know at all, rogue was, you know, getting a skull above your head. This is in the original, you know, when we released the Division 1, saying this player has killed another player, and it's now, you know, fair game to take this player out without consequence. But that player stands to lose a lot potentially, right? So, of course, that is still in the Division 2, where you can choose to go rogue, take another player, and then keep escalating that all the way up to triggering a manhunt. And we wanted to extend that experience towards something a little less intimidating maybe than engaging with another player in full-on PvP, where things like opportunism, greed, you know,
selfishness.
Yeah, you could say even selfishness can also be, you know, the entry point into the rogue loop. So that's what we call rogue action. So things like deciding to take an entire supply drop for yourself instead of sharing it will flag your rogue and set you on into this little journey, which is what they're doing here, I think. Yes.
Yes, they've actually already gone through the whole thing. They've unlocked the Thieves' Den, which we'll touch upon in the Thieves' Den.
And this Thieves' Den is very different from the Shade Safe House that's also located in the Dark Zone. So
you can find these in sewers. You can find them in
different entry points. It's always going to be a surprise because you have to triangulate their location. So we don't want everybody sort of aiming for the same location every time. So there's a randomization there. So we're using different locations within the map. Manhole covers, for example, entryways, doors, as potentially the entrance into the Thieves' Den.
And also exiting, like little tricks to make sure that, okay, but you might think that like what stops other players from just waiting outside the door. On exit, you will emerge somewhere else.
Yeah.
The experience. I can see myself going into the Dark Zone much more now than I could in the first game because I'm scared. And
well, do you want to jump in on that?
Sure. It's I mean, like any well-crafted experience, there's this tapestry of features and rule set and design decision that create that result, right? So I think there are many things contributing to why it's a more PvE only friendly experience. One of them being what I just described with that rogue loop, where you can get the thrill of other players being present, almost seeing them like the ultimate enemies of the Dark Zone, but you don't have to engage with them to get that enjoyment. And other things like uncontaminated loot, which I think is very important ingredient. Yeah. Where, you know, really the I would say the most distilled moment of tension and, you know, excitement in the Dark Zone is when you found something that you really, really want and you have to extract it. Shooting that flare, you know, you're visible to everyone. People know there's an extraction going on. I have to be in this place for this amount of time to successfully get my stuff. We don't want to screw with that. So that's, of course, still in the game. I'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're heading to an extraction or what's actually going on. They're not.
They're not.
So far, live gameplay.
I'm sure we'll see it in a bit. But what we've done is that we've added loot into the Dark Zone that goes direct to inventory. And this is also to make it a slightly more predictably rewarding experience for the time that you invest. But it also means that you don't necessarily have to expose yourself through an extraction, which is very exposing, right, to other players.
Yeah.
But the contaminated loot, however,
I was about to say the flip side of having access to non-contaminated loot is that the contaminated loot that you get, we're going to strive to make that even more relevant to you.
Right.
So behind the scenes, what we do is that yellow bag, once you get one, you don't know what's in there. You have to extract it to know what it's going to be. And we can predictably roll behind the scenes something that's going to be more useful for you. So that's a huge deal. So that means that when you see a yellow bag, when you see some piece of contaminated loot, that's going to be worth extracting. So that creates that, real desire to, okay, this is going to be predictably better than anything else.
Right. But I can still feel, because that's a fear now going in. I only have my contaminated loot, but now I always get rewarded. It entails everything. It entails cutting the rope, for example, and it entails killing other players. And of course, as implied by our discussions, that's still something you can do in the Dark Zone,
of course,
or the Dark Zones, obviously. So how does that work in the Division 2? Like you go rogue, you steal stuff, and then you go disavowed.
Yeah, so I think I just want to make it really clear that don't think about this as different, disconnected experiences. No. It's really about one long gradient where you chose where to come in and how far to go. So we already covered the greed stealing part of going rogue, but disavowed is what we call the act of actually killing another player now. So that's when you get flagged in a different way. It's clear to everyone, like this player's now taken a life.
Yep.
And
I'm really hoping on the gameplay here that they will find another team and hunt them down.
They should.
Or get wrecked. Yeah. I don't mind either way. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, but and then of course that is, if you want to, the beginning of a journey all the way up to triggering Manhunt. Right. Where Golden Skull, that's not going to time out, right? So this very similar to the first game. Clearing Manhunt status is a matter of going to these terminals, right? But what we added now in Division 2 is the ability to, once you get to one, because you're going to have 3 active, choose to elevate your status even further, reducing your way out, so to say, to now 2. And then you can do that again and have 1 left, which is really about giving players more tools who like that experience to kind of tailor it to how much risk reward do I want? How much do I think we can handle? Or alone too.
We're just by a canal. One of the canals of the Dark Zone, and you'll notice that Georgetown, Dark Zone West, is the location where, and I'm not giving away too much, but this is where the DC-62, the yellow powder, was sprayed to try and contain the virus, to try and neutralize the effects of the virus. Didn't work out. Within the context of what was happening at the time, it turned out that this was ultra toxic. So you're going in. This is a dangerous place. There's lots and lots of stuff. It's absolutely gorgeous. There are so many things to discover here. And as you can see, it looks so different from the rest sightseeing. I mean, if you can go Manhunt, that'd be great, because it is a loop that is super risk reward focused. And we do know that a lot of players love that loop. So this allows them to keep chaining those timers and to get as much from it as possible.
Sorry?
No,
I thought you were going to say something.
Just so polite.
Excuse me.
Connected though to the Dark Zone experience and the Dark Zone progression are new. Speaking of risk reward, gaining something that you might actually lose later on, the Dark Zone perks.
Yep. Now the Dark Zone perks, something that I think is awesome. And you're going to get perks based on your levels, which is what we're calling ranks for the Division 2. And we have 50 levels. Straight away, you're going to get some great perks. I think it's level 1, you get to carry 1 extra item for extraction. But then it goes to things that are so cool, like lowering the extraction timer. So these things, you're not going to want to lose these perks. So you're going to want to defend your dark zone level as much as possible. So again, it's little things like this that increase the depth of what we're proposing to all types of players in the dark zone. And that extends to one of the things that I know that Terry is so passionate about, which are the occupied dark zones.
We have 3 dark zones. So any given time in endgame, one of them will be what we call occupied. And what that means is really that there's always going to be a place for players to go and have that original experience, meaning no normalization, friendly fire is always on, and risk reward is really turned to 11. So it's the place, if you like that experience of complete ambiguity, but also it's not just my player skill alone, it's really also my build versus yours. That's the place to go. And the cool thing with 3 is that this will rotate on a certain schedule. So it's not like, oh, if I want to play occupied, I'm stuck with playing only south, for example. Like it will change so that you really get to experience all 3, no matter what is your primary preference.
You could ask questions about things like server infrastructure and anti-cheat. So we put together a short video with a couple of those questions. So take a look at that, and then after that, we will be back with Redstorm to talk about PvP. So we will see you then.
Hi, my name is Jan Harrison. I'm a senior online infrastructure engineer with the division, and I do backend and infrastructure.
Hi, my name is Duran Fatih Güngör, and I work as a senior gameplay programmer on the Division 2.
Okay, well, we didn't intend to, but we definitely won't.
So easy anti-cheat is basically our first line of defense, I would say, and it prevents the player from tampering with memory or the executable or the data itself. We moved on, and now it's more of an online cheat detection tool so that we can act on it instantly.
So I wouldn't say we rely on the cloud. We use the cloud to bolster what we already have. So we work with a hardware provider who gives us physical machines, very powerful physical machines. And then on top of that, we add the scalability of the cloud. So we try and get best of both worlds. So you get the really good performance of the bare metal, but you also get the expandability of the cloud.
Yes, it's always been proactive. We had the banhammers every week, and we have the offline data and the analyzers that give the reports, who used what cheat tools. And we've been without mercy, and coupled with our new cheat measures, it should be a much more fair ground.
So because of our scalable infrastructure, hopefully that would not happen. We have enough capacity in each region to be able to accommodate like almost the entire player base of Division 2 that we expect. But if you have a friend who is in US West and you're in Asia, then obviously one of you is going to have to make a compromise, and we would decide that for you.
We're gonna be transparent with the tick rates when the game releases, and right now we are testing on target hardware for the servers, so we are figuring things out. There can be like slight changes. We have done a lot of optimizations on the server side as well to support all the player simulation and everything around it. So we're gonna communicate that.
So it's going to be dedicated server infrastructure. Everyone will connect to a server, and the server will handle a lot of things, especially artificial intelligence and positioning in the game. It's the server that's authoritative.
We have addressed a lot of the player replication issues from the first game, the infamous chicken dance and the running in place bug. And this is all thanks to all the improvements and fixes that we did in the locomotion system and new animations and new animation systems.
Yes, we're planning on having coverage in South America, North America, Europe, Asia, Oceania, around 13 data center locations in total.
You can instead donate to charity, because if you use cheat tools, you're gonna be banned for sure.
Topic. Yeah. Normalization was it was very important for us, with fairness and inclusion as, you know, two of the big pillars for PvP, and it was something we knew we needed to include because although we are an RPG, we also want players to be able to participate in gun battles, you know, that they feel are fair. And when you have a game with such stat diversity like we do, it was sort of a
it's a
no-brainer.
It's a super important layer, but you know, I think what you pointed out, right? We had the concept of normalization in the first game, but that's the key thing. Is normalization is just an idea, and you can apply it in all sorts of different ways. So we've completely redone our normalization system from the first game to work with all the improvements to the RPG that are in the Division 2.
Yep. Let's not go deeper into that at the moment, but we can say that it applies to everything. It applies not only to the organized PvP modes, but also outside of the occupied dark zones, applied to the dark zone as well.
And that was super cool for us to be able to have the occupied dark zones, a place where we can say, in contrast to, you know, the normal dark zones and organized PvP, okay, here you go. You have your full statistical advantage that you've spent a lot of time working on. Go have fun together. Go play with each other. Shoot each other.
Yeah, and then, you know, that core idea of normalization this time is, you know, we're not just pushing everyone to the exact same power level. We're taking your build and making it still really matter, but we're kind of getting rid of those really high peaks of damage output and those really high sustainability builds and pulling everyone a little bit more in focus.
I think it's important to note too that I mean, there are a lot of details to this normalization plan that we haven't discussed yet, but just imagine that if we're setting a bar for normalization, if you're under that bar, we help you move up to the bar. And if you're over that bar, players that are over that normalization standards position, you're going to receive some statistical bonuses for being over. And they're not huge advantages, but they are in fact advantages.
And they make your time and your build and your choices still matter, right? Still be felt.
Yeah, and I think one thing I think you should talk about, Keith, is the fact that this normalization allows us to keep PvP and PvE separate.
Yeah, I think that's one of the core things. Is normalization isn't just changing the stats blanketly on your gear. It's going in and doing talent overrides just for normalized play, or skill adjustments just for normalized play, with the idea of keeping PvP in balance but never affecting the PvE game. We want to give you all that power in PvE.
You know, we're very engaged in the conversation right now. We know there's an active discussion in the community. We're paying attention to all those conversations. It's wonderful, in fact, to be able to have the conversations now. We'd like people to play it in the beta and what we have in place, and really get their hands on it and feel it. And then once that happens, you know, we're very open to making changes and adjustments so the community is happy. The point is, okay, how can we help curb some of that toxicity that we had in the original game?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like what you said before. It's about the inclusiveness of the experience and getting more people to come in, giving you all the tools of the last game, and stripping out some of the toxicity.
Yeah, we're very aware that there's a lot of great relationships that happen in the dark zone, especially that ad hoc stuff. You didn't expect to meet a person, and then you got some great teamwork. We don't want to take that away at all. That's part of the very unique nature of the dark zone that all of us identify as very important. Yeah. But we also want to try and steer our players away from the feeling that it's a bully community. and how can we help people feel comfortable, more comfortable, without taking away some of the magic. So it's an iterative process. Like always, we're going to pay attention to how the community feels and how we feel and move from there.
For these PvP game modes, we want to have some connecting ideas, and one of those are the boosts. So in all these modes, you'll have these passive perks that can come online that you can go claim as an objective for your team, and you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of it, but it's going to give you some little advantage. In Domination, it might increase your score count. In Team Deathmatch, it might give you extra armor for a little bit across your whole team. And it's just these little ways to augment the fight and make it, honestly, it just kind of ups the excitement level. You can be, maybe behind by a little bit, get one of these boosts and pull yourself back into the fight.
They're tertiary objectives. It's meant to just supplement the main gameplay loops that are happening, but they're on the sides. You know, you might have an active boost. You can pick it up and help your team.
So we're actually jumping over right now to the second organized PvP mode that will be available at launch of the Division 2, Domination. So can you tell us a little bit about that as we get the match up and running?
You bet. Dom. I mean, I personally love Domination.
Is that what we call it, Dom?
Well, I mean, come on.
I'm just making sure I'm down with the lingo.
Yeah, you're down with the lingo. The goal with Conflict as a PvP destination was to give players modes that they're very comfortable with, modes that don't take a lot of overhead understanding. And Dom, as a game mode where you have to capture objectives, creates that just little nugget of tactics. You get to play some defense, and it was something we all wanted to include.
Yeah, and I think it was also a mode that we could do a
jump
cool
into the gameplay. We have Frederick and Astrid here in the studio, and a bunch of other people
aren't just
in the building
actually,
that will be playing live.
See
and we're going to start out actually in Dark
the space
Zone
at the very
South.
beginning. You have this little period where the objectives aren't active. Maybe you fight over B for just 15, 20 seconds and try to clear out the other team.
Really didn't touch on before is one big endgame feature in the Division 2, of course, being the specializations and how they come into play in PvP. So, for example, how you get specialization ammo, etc. For
So the specializations are obviously it's a huge new part of the whole PvP or RPG progression that comes in at endgame. And we know they're super powerful. They're meant to be really powerful. And we didn't want to take those away from you in PvP. We want to give you moments to use them. But we've changed the way that you get that special ammo and made it kind of a real tactical component that's integrated straight into the Conflict game mode.
We didn't want people just to come in with their specs and just crush. We didn't want PvP to be just about, okay, what's the best specialization weapon? I'm just going to use that the whole time.
Yeah. So you'll start the match. You'll have your specialization weapon on your back once you're at level 30. You can even see what specializations are equipped on the opposing team and on your team up at the top of the screen. So you can kind of plan what might happen in the battle. But you're only going to get that specialization ammo a few key times in the match. And it will actually airdrop in like a supply drop from the Dark Zone. And both teams can fight over control of that. The winning team gets a little bit of specialization ammo for their whole squad. But the really interesting part is if you can get in there and wipe out the other team, they drop any specialization ammo they had, and your team can try to take it back, kind of swing the fight.
One thing you also had the opportunity to do when you sat down and started working on the PvP for the second game was, if we look at the first game, if we look at Skirmish, those maps are actually taken from parts of the world. But here you had a chance to start from scratch. You were able to build custom map from the ground up.
Yeah, the PvP experience as a starting pillar, included from the get-go. How do you make the best PvP experience? Well, it starts with the maps. And we knew that this was the perfect time for us to get the LDs and the LAs and the level designers and the level artists in there and make real PvP maps for the first time in the division.
Yeah, there's no nothing here where you're kind of serving two very different types of gameplay, right? So every decision that's made from the level design standpoint is all about what's going to create fair tactical PvP. And it allows us to explore some spaces that aren't inside the rest of the DC space.
Yeah, they're beautiful. We can see my favorite in the background, and just because I said that out loud, I forgot forgot the name of it, but it's beautiful.
Capital Ruins.
Capital
Yeah, it's
Ruins,
awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's inspired by a real location in DC, you know, where you can go and there's, you know, pieces of the old White House that were sort of discarded in a park. I don't remember the name of the park offhand, but it's all there and it's surrounded by vegetation, and it was a perfect place for a map.
Yeah, something so distinct, you know, from the rest of the Dark Zones, other places you're going to be PvPing.
Yeah,
absolutely beautiful. So
thanks, bud.
One thing also coming from the first game is one concept that's been a big part of the discussions around the first game is time to kill. And how does that differ in because fights in the first game can get quite long. So how does that work in the second game? How did you approach that?
Well, as again a high level experience, Keith can go into some of the details, but we wanted players to be able to, I'm going to just say a term we used here, wanted players to be able to outmap each other.
Yeah.
So flanking and, you know, map tactics and team tactics, we wanted it to matter. So often, you know, it was common in the Dark Zone and in some of the later skirmish maps to, you know, successfully flank a person, and then because of the mechanics we used, maybe the kill didn't happen as you had anticipated. And now with kill times, how they're currently being set, you can absolutely get the jump on someone and get the kill.
Yeah, there's just because of like the core changes to the feel of combat across the entire Division 2 experience, there were just so many little changes that improved PvP overall. So I think gunplay feels really awesome. It's has a real impact to it, and the time to kill damage is just higher in general. A lot of the just healing in general is so reworked from the first game. So there's no instant pop heals. There's no, I was almost dead, but then I popped an instant heal and I'm right back in the fight, right? Healing is always over time, and you really have to get safe and get in cover to successfully pull off those kind of clutch heal moments. And it lets the fights actually resolve, and it feels really good.
Yeah, there's no doubt that PvP, well, of course, you can run up and try to face tank.
Sure.
And this is an RPG, and there are skills.
And there are shotguns. You're going to want to get in there.
Yeah. But you better use cover. And it's pretty deadly, and it's very exciting to play. You want to talk about a rush. Every time we play test, there's always some extraordinary moments where somebody pulls off like especially in Georgetown. Anyway, I'm sorry, going off on a tangent. It feels really good to have kill times that we do and have it be able to mix and mash with, you know, what we consider division, you know, skills and stuff like that. It feels really good.
Yeah, I don't think we would have been able to pull off really this very focused domination experience as well as we have with the first game's mechanics. I think getting in there and actually being in cover and really being scared about people encroaching your space, it just makes it feel so much better.
You know what I want to talk about real quick? Sorry, tangent. I want to talk about the domination points and the passive and active stuff.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, go. You should talk. You're smarter than me. Go.
That's not true. Yeah, so, you know, the idea, you know, domination, I think everyone kind of understands how it works. And we have a lot of those tried and true mechanics, right? You get inside the zone, the more people you have inside the zone, you're going to capture faster, you can overtake the other team. But there's another component to capturing objectives in this game, which I think is really interesting. And it's this active capture. So you can, you know, rush into the middle and actually interact on the crate, and you can steal it much faster and kind of overtake it from another team, even if they were inside of it. So you can try to sneak in, or maybe you've cleared out the other team and you want to capture it really quick before they get back into the fight. And it adds this other layer of decision making that I think really kind of elevates this version of domination.
Yeah, it feels really good to be able to have choice with the domination point and how you want to approach it as a team. You want to sit back, take cover, you know, go passive. You want to cover a man who's going to run in and try to actively capture it. Of course, you're exposed when you're actively capturing.
And you get these hero moments, right? Like a lot of the time, it's 2 teams of 4 clashing on B, and you know your whole team gets wiped out. You get the final kill, and you have 5 seconds before you know the other team is going to start edging back in on you.
Yeah.
And you're talking over comms, and you get that capture, and it feels awesome.
Yeah, that's another thing. You're talking about respawns. Something we've changed from the first game is.
You're just taking points from my lists here now, Terry.
Sorry, buddy.
No. Let's pretend I asked that question. Let's talk about respawns.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go. Wave spawning, go.
Well, just wave spawning in general, we've done a lot of things to the spawn system to try to improve it from the first game. You'll notice the wave spawn makes it, you'll die and you might have 10, 15 seconds to wait until that next spawn wave comes in, but it lets your group kind of group back up, all come back in together, do a really focused push back into the match. And then we've also done a lot of stuff to, alleviate spawn camping and try to just make it a better overall PvP experience. So all the maps have spawn flipping integrated. So if a team pushes too far into your spawn area, or there's too many kills inside the spawn area, that'll flip. And it kind of just keeps the matches more balanced, gets rid of these really runaway, 10-2 sort of matches.
Yep.
And speaking of keeping those fights that way, it's no secret that I'm absolutely rubbish at PvP. So when matchmaking into PvP, what can I expect? Like, how will the matchmaking work?
Well, it's a skill-based matchmaking system. I know Keith is probably going to talk about this, but we're a part of the wonderful organization of Ubisoft, and we had the opportunity to really talk to a lot of other teams, how they use matchmaking and the strong parts about it, and we've integrated a lot of those learnings into the Division PvP. So from a vision or a direction standpoint, I wanted to make sure that players always felt comfortable that they were playing against people near their skill level, and skill-based matchmaking was the obvious choice.